Everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff, and welcome to Cheap Knife Week, Volume 5. Today we're taking a look at our last knife. It's the Ozark Trail Bugout Killer. The Ozark Grail, whatever you want to call it. This thing has been called a lot of different things over the past couple months on Knife YouTube, and now you get to hear my thoughts on it. So, this should be fun. Let's go ahead and just stop wasting time and get into this. Let's start off with our blade length measurements. Sharpened edge. We are coming in here at, call that 3 1/8 inches of sharpened edge. Overall blade length is just under, well, get on screen here, Gideon. Overall blade length is just over 3 1/4 inches. Pretty standard EDC knife size. Let's go ahead and do some measurements or some size comparisons. My bad. Here's our Rat 2 and here's our Rat 1. There we go. Falls in kind of nicely between them. Let's grab our, let's grab our USA made comparisons next. Here is the Spyderco PM2, and here's the Benchmade Bugout. Probably the most noteworthy size comparison today. Next up, let's bring out our Civivis. There's the Praxis, and here's the Elementum. Sweet. And to wrap up size comparisons, let's compare it against the knives that we have looked at so far this season of Cheap Knife Week. Here's the Mossy Oak Monstrosity. Here's the Smith & Wesson Big Benji. Next up, let's grab the, do I even have it here? Where did I put that knife? Just a second. I found it. Of course, that is the Camillus Chiller. And yesterday's review, the SOG Adventurer LB. There we go. A good little roundup of knives. What are we looking at here on this knife? Well, we have a drop point blade of D2 steel. We have injection molded scales with steel liners, a steel pocket clip, and a crossbar lock. So, let's go cut some stuff. Cheap Knife Week, Volume 5, Episode 5. Probably the most anticipated review of this season of Cheap Knife Week. Let me know if you think so. The Ozark Trail Bugout Killer. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about the action. Very, very good action, I feel like. I have tightened this thing down so that there's no blade play. And it still drops very, very nicely. This is running on bearings. Got a good little pop of that detent. Not too shabby there. Now, the tension on the Omega springs is the lightest I have ever felt. It is very, very light. It's not very confidence inspiring. I'm not sure what the lifespan of these springs is. Probably not much. But yeah, the action is very, very good. Let's talk about the ergos. This is a little bit of a thick knife. We do have contoured plastic scales. Feels great in hand. I do feel the clip digging in a little bit. But other than that, there's not a whole lot to complain about with these ergonomics. They are very, very solid. And in fact, if I adjust my grip just slightly, I get off that clip complete. That clip. I get off the clip complete. We're going to take 5. As difficult as these things were to find for a while because everyone was buying them, you could call the Ozark Trail clip. My stand-up routine is coming to a city near you, never, the 3rd, November 10th. Okay, all right. All right, guys, let's get back to this review. Get all thoughts of clits out of your mind, you nasty bastards, okay? I'm talking to you. All right. Anyways, what I was saying was if I adjust my grip, I get off the clip, and it feels pretty dang good. Actually, I think it feels better when you're on the clip, but...
Stop it. Get some help.
It's been a long day. Oh, I went to church this morning. Alrighty, guys, I apologize for the middle school humor. We are professionals here at Gideon Stuff. Had to get that out of my system. This review cutting is taking way too long to get through. Let's go ahead and talk about the carry. Oh my goodness, we're back to talking about the clip. Okay, we can do this. Alright, so the knife itself is very lightweight. The pocket clip is not reversible. That's a huge, huge L. Ozark Trail. Okay, I'm not going to say that. Anyways, in the pocket. The clip itself doesn't work terribly. It's an okay clip. I wouldn't say it's amazing, but it's not, like, offensive. The knife itself is, again, lightweight. Tucks away to the back of the pocket very, very nicely. So, yeah, the biggest thing is just they should have made it reversible. But yeah, there we go. Okay, let's go ahead and do some cutting. So this blade is supposedly D2 steel. I haven't the means to verify that for myself, other than just using the knife, and I don't have enough data to see how it compares to other D2 I felt. We do have a hollow grind on here, actually a very thin blade. Drop point, so we can get to the tip for utility cuts very, very nicely. And yeah, it slices very, very well. That feels pretty good. All right, let's grab our rope. Ouch. Okay, there we go. That didn't feel quite as nice. Let's go ahead and crunch down on this thing. 1, 2, 3. Okay, not bad, not bad. Knife is still working. And let's do some pool noodle cutting. 1, 2. Oh, that felt pretty good. Oh my goodness, yeah. A little bit grabby. We did go pretty thin here. We kind of snagged right there. But that is, that's nothing to shake a stick at. That felt pretty darn solid. So, yeah, and just eyeballing it, this thing, the grind seems okay. It looks like we're a little bit thicker. We're a little bit higher angle on this side, a little bit lower angle on that side. But side to side, it looks pretty consistent from tip to ricasso. So, not too bad. There's a look at that Halloween-themed knife. Let's go ahead and get back to the table. How am I going to take this review seriously? Now, whenever I look at this knife, this is just the Ozark Trail clitoris to me. This is a family channel. Alrighty, let's talk about what I'm liking and not liking about this knife. But actually, before we get into that, I want to say, a couple weeks ago, at the time of this recording, Best Damn EDC released a video comparing this knife and the Bugout head-to-head, and I highly recommend you check that out. I'm sure many of you, or most of you, have already seen it, but I definitely recommend checking that video out. Part of me really wanted to do a destruction test on this knife, but I realized that wouldn't really be appropriate for Cheap Knife Week. And then he made his excellent video, and I think that's definitely worth watching if you want to know exactly what this knife's limits are. So definitely check that out. Okay, now let's go ahead and get on to what I'm liking and not liking about this knife. Number one, I've always been a fan of Ozark Trail, And it is really cool to see them kind of trying to be a real knife company, if that makes sense. So when I first heard about this knife, I was obviously very, very excited. And here it is. Next thing, this is actual D2 steel. Is it the best D2 steel out there? No, absolutely not. But it is actual D2, which I think is pretty surprising. I would not have been surprised if it was not real D2, but it's been tested and verified by a couple of people in the community. It is real D2 steel, so I like that. And it makes my heart happy that Ozark Trail is not trying to pull the wool over our eyes or deceive us, and they're giving us what they say they're giving us. I think that's noteworthy. Next thing, I do like that they decided to go with a crossbar lock. That's a very fidgety lock. It's a finger-safe lock. It's an ambidextrous lock. I think that's cool. How similar is this knife to a Bugout? Honestly, I don't think it's similar enough to be called a direct clone. I mean, it's a crossbar lock, drop point with thumb studs. It's pretty hard to, not resemble the Bugout when you say things like that. But I do feel like the handle profile is, kind of different enough. The blade is a little bit different, but, whatever. It's definitely derivative of the Bugout from Benchmade, but I don't think it's a clone necessarily. Maybe a copy, but definitely not a clone. Next thing, let's go ahead and talk about this blade. This blade is not terrible. Drop point is a very good, versatile blade shape. We've got a hollow grind here. This knife cuts decently well. Not going to be the greatest cutter, although you could probably make it a fairly decent cutter if you reprofile this edge a little bit, worked it over. But I was fairly pleased with this blade. You can see there we come down to a very nice thin tip, and yeah, I enjoyed using this over the time that I used it. Next up, the ergos. I actually like the ergos quite a bit. This knife does fill my hand. You've got plenty of room on here. The scales are contoured. You can see that, which is kind of a difference from the Bugout. This is quite a bit thicker than a Bugout, and I appreciate that. It makes the knife feel a lot more substantial, fits in my hand a lot better, and it does feel good. The pocket clip is fine. Not my favorite pocket clip, but it does work. It's not too grabby or anything. Do wish they had flat screws, but the clip is technically inset to the scales, and in and out of the pocket, it works just fine. Fit and finish, this knife was centered. Lockup on this one has been good. We haven't had any issues there. There's no blade play right now. When I first unboxed it, there was a little bit of blade play, but just a twist of the pivot got rid of that. So that's awesome. The action is pretty good, and honestly, this thumb stud smacks. I would put this up against most, budget crossbar locks. For example, I've had budget crossbar locks from like Ganzo, and this feels just as good or better than some of those. In terms of the smoothness, we'll talk about something else with a crossbar lock, but in terms of the smoothness and the detent, it feels good. Thumb studs are comfortable. I appreciate that a whole lot. Back to the handles again. We've got kind of this milling here. It's a little bit interesting. I appreciate that. And this knife is $10. This knife is $10. Now, I normally don't talk about the price until the very, very end, but just for comparison, this knife is 3 times less expensive than the Big Benji that we looked at earlier this week. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Construction seems pretty good. I did not disassemble this knife entirely, but I did kind of take it apart just to kind of look inside, and the pivot wasn't free spinning. I was able to get into this guy fairly easily, so I like that a whole bunch. Okay, let's go ahead and get onto some things that I don't like. And my number one problem with this knife is that the tension on these Omega springs feels very, very weak. This does not feel very strong, does not inspire a whole lot of confidence in me. These Omega springs, I imagine, might wear out pretty easily over time. They're just, it doesn't feel like there's much going on there. I would have really liked to have these feel a little more solid, but again, $10. How much am I going to complain for $10? I don't know, but definitely, I mean, if I'm comparing this to like this Vosteed grind here, you know, there is a massive, massive difference. And this knife is 7 times more expensive, but still, I do notice that, and that is the cheapest feeling part of this knife to me. The scales are kind of cheapish, but the weakness on those springs, that is the part that feels the most. That feels like they cut the corners the most there. The jimping on top of the blade is not my favorite thing ever. Could come out further. It's not super sharp, but I'm not going to rail on them too hard for that. One thing I am going to rail on them really hard for, though, is, excuse me, Ozark Trail. I think you forgot something on this side. Make it a reversible clip. This is otherwise a completely ambidextrous knife, but they give you a right side only clip. I absolutely hate it when companies do this, and I'm not giving Ozark Trail a pass on that because in the past they've done crossbar locks and they have made the clip reversible. Whenever you make a knife that is lefty friendly, but then refuse to flip that clip to the other side, it just feels like a big middle finger to all the lefties in the community, and I feel for you guys. I feel for you guys. But that is pretty much my biggest complaints. Those are my biggest complaints. So let's go on to my final conclusions. Now, you might be kind of surprised that this review was as short as it is. I imagine we will be talking about this knife in more videos in the future because this knife made quite a splash. But I'm going to share some of my thoughts right now. And again, I encourage you to watch Best Damn EDC's video. Taylor over there, I think he did a lot of... I think he answered a lot of questions that many of us had regarding this knife. Here's my thoughts. I've carried this knife for quite some time at this point. And as an EDC knife goes, I was not using this in rough environments. I was not going out of my way to hard use this and abuse it. In just regular EDC, this knife did just fine. Is it a cheap knife? Yes, absolutely. This is not... I would not say that this is a knife that is on par with your Civivis or your QSPs or your CJRBs, things like that. I mean, heck, right now in my pocket, I've got my CJRB Shale. And there's a lot of similarities between these two knives. But this is 10 times, actually, maybe not. Actually, this is 5 times the knife that this knife is. But this is a $10 knife. This is a $10 knife. And you know the saying, you get what you pay for? I think you get a little bit more than what you pay for with this. I think this is a lot of knife for $10, and there's a lot of good stuff going on here. This is 100% a usable knife. Is it going to have the longest lifespan? I don't know. Probably not. I would not imagine it's going to have the longest lifespan. Is this D2 going to hold up real great? Probably not, but I'll be honest, it's held up okay for me. Do I have some paper lying around here? I've got... that's not what I'm looking for. Yeah, I've got this little scrap of sticky note from a review a little while ago. Here's a better piece of sticky note. Let's get that out of the way. Now we've got some rough spots, but I mean, honestly, I've been happy with how it's held up. I haven't really done any edge maintenance on it since I've been carrying it. And again, I haven't been using it super hard, but I feel like that D2 steel, even if it's not heat treated 100% optimally, is still going to be good enough for a $10 knife. The blade geometry, when I do sharpen this, I'm probably going to improve that quite a bit. But again, you're spending $10, and I think you're getting a dang good knife for that price. So, do I recommend it? I do. If you're someone that really does have a restricted knife budget, I do recommend this. For those of you that can spend more, But if this is where you're at, this is about the best Ozark Trail there is. And that's going to be it for today, guys. Tomorrow we're going to be ranking all of these, and I can't wait to see how that works. Big shout out to my channel members here. I really appreciate everything they do for the channel. They are awesome. If you want to be a channel member, there's a link below. I've been Gideon. I'll see you in the next one. Adios. Oh, like, comment, and subscribe. There we go. Adios.